We've reached the midway point of the 2012 season and we're at Snetterton in Norfolk. You can see behind me with the clouds, well, the weather cannot make up its mind, but we have got some fantastic racing on offer as ever. Welcome to Thundersport GB. RST Golden Era Superbikes at Snetterton, round 5 of the 2012 championship. Lee Reevely on pole position, the championship leader, but there is a story to come about Lee, which I'll mention in a moment. Nick Williamson there, second place on the grid for the rider on the RBM Industrial Honda SP1. We're missing third place on the grid, and then we move on to number 64. And that is Adam Palfreman from Letchworth on the Rothwell Racing Honda. Oh, and finally, Richard Blunt makes his way onto the grid on the Dave Blunt Racing Suzuki. Rider from Bury St Edmunds, not a million miles away from Snetterton. Wet tyres on the machines, and yes, Lee Reevely, the championship leader by quite some distance. Unfortunately, his bike went bang. His Aprilia, and well, what an act of sportsmanship from number 6, Nick Williamson. Bearing in mind, Nick is a direct contender for the championship. He has lent Lee Reevely his spare bike for this race, and there's somebody that can't get off the line there. That's number 16, Craig Jeff, the rider from Barnsley. But as we pan back to Montreal, it's Richard Blunt that's got off to the best start ahead of Palfreman, I believe. But yes, so Lee Reevely out there, despite having his own fairings on the spare bike of Nick Williamson. Nick has lent him the bike. Now, there's a lot of riders out there that wouldn't have done such a thing. Bearing in mind, Nick could have picked up quite a few points today and caught up with Lee in the championship. So hats off to Nick Williamson, the rider from Southampton. He'd really be upset if Lee was to go on and win this race now. The bike that he's been lent isn't quite as quick as his Aprilia Miele, but it's wet out there, so power not really essential as it would be normally. I just see there number 81, Marcel Brinkman, up ahead of Craig Jeff, who's already managed to catch up. And look at the front of this one, the rain pouring down as Richard Blunt on the SRAD 750 goes through ahead of Adam Palfreman. There's number 6 and number 62. That's Jason Dixon from Grantham. Oh dear, and there's a rider down into turn 1, and that's number 58. Brian Spreadborough on the Aprilia has gone down. It's hard to look at a bike, number 58, without thinking of Marco Simoncelli, of course, but Brian Spreadborough is down into turn 1, manages to pick the bike back up, and he's going to wheel it away. That's not going anywhere. You're not allowed to remount and rejoin. Slippery surface flag is out, but back at the front of this one, Richard Blunt leads on the Suzuki. Richard second in the championship, but over 200 points behind Lee Reevely overall. There is number 64, Adam Palfreman from Letchworth, just trying to close him down. And in the background, Nick Williamson is trying to keep track of Jason Dixon, who's hovering around him. Lee Reevely is a bit further back on the stand-in Aprilia. Lee, sponsored by E2E Solutions, hoping to get that Aprilia or some sort of machine ready and prepared for Rockingham in a couple of weeks' time. Hopefully we'll get better weather than we've got here. Richard Blunt, the Bury St Edmunds rider, leads this from number 64, Adam Palfreman, the Rothwell Racing machine. There's Nick Williamson, number 6. Oh, under threat there from Jason Dixon on the TPS Property Maintenance Suzuki. The old SRAD 750. A good choice of weapon back in the late 90s. Out of Montreal come the race leader, Richard Blunt, who managed to fit that engine into that Suzuki, I think on Thursday evening, ready for Friday practice. Not had many laps on the new engine on the Suzuki, but has been in the championship since the start of the year. In second place there is Palfreman. Number of riders not out on circuit. Of course, Keith Smith, who started the year so well on the Aprilia Mille, is absent due to injury, and there's a change for the lead as Palfreman sneaks up the inside. That's brave into Coram Curve, very fast around there. You can see all of the standing water on the outside. Easy to go over that and slip off. We've seen a number of riders do that already this weekend at Snetterton, but it's now Palfreman that leads, and Blunt is fighting back. The pair of them, good drive from Blunt on the exit of Murray's, and as they make their way onto the start-finish straight, they are side by side, heading into Ritchie's turn. And it's going to be Palfreman just that has the advantage as they head into Ritchie's. First and second place here. They've got about 3 or 4 seconds over Nick Williamson and Jason Dixon behind. Lee Reevely in 5th place. Craig Jeff is making good progress after not getting off the line at all. Don Plain is out there also on Aprilia. Lee Powell. Marcel Brinkman still inside the top 8, as is Mark Evans. And look out for number 94, Phil Page on the Kawasaki also. There is number 22, Lee Powell. Good friends and works from the same garage as Lee Reevely. But Palfreman, since he's got out front, he's just been able to pull away as he tips into Coram Curve. This is where he's showing so much speed earlier on, just powering the Honda around. Oh, he's got his foot out. What's happening here? Palfreman's got his foot out. Surely he's not coming into the pits. Adam Palfreman tips in left, and he's got a problem with the bike. Adam Palfreman's pulling out of this one. Palfreman had his foot out as he made his way around Coram Curve, and Palfreman's out. And that leaves Blunt at the front, and Williamson has closed in now. Williamson having a look on the SP1. There he is, tipping into Ritchie's corner. Act of kindness that he's given to championship protagonist Lee Reevely, and he's going to go up the inside now into Montreal. So Richard Blunt had inherited first, but has lost it again now. Very close through Montreal, but no dirty moves. Good exit out of Montreal for Richard Blunt, and look at the power and the acceleration from the Suzuki. The top end speed of that Honda should start kicking in now though, and as they make their way into Brundle and then Nelson, it's going to be just Nick Williamson that has it from Blunt. They exit Nelson up towards the bomb hole, and well, this is a good example of 2 different machines from the late 90s going head to head. Of course, the SP1 in World Superbikes was probably made most famous by Colin Edwards, the Texas Tornado, who rode so well on the SP1 in Castrol Honda colours up against Troy Bayliss all those years ago in World Superbikes, and James Whittam, I suppose you could say, and the likes of Frankie Keeley, etc., Chris Walker. They're the riders, Superbike-wise, that you remember riding on the Suzuki S-Rad, side by side again as they tip into Ritchie's. It's just Williamson from Blunt. There's a number of different lines you can take into Ritchie's corner. You can take the tight entry, you can take the wide line. It's a double apex right-hander, so either way will work for you. And Williamson there defending his line. Craig Jeff made excellent progress. He's lapping just a second or so down on the leader's pace. He's coming up on Lee Reevely up front there. And Blunt has been dropped a little bit. Nick Williamson has just pulled away by a second or so, and Richard Blunt exits Nelson corner and into the bomb hole, and he's now lost touch of Nick. There is the race leader, Nick Williamson, the RBM Industrial Honda SP1, currently 3rd in the championship, not a million miles behind Richard Blunt overall in the standings. So 25 points here would be lovely for Nick on the start-finish straight. Look at the lead, he's now got over Blunt, and maybe there's a problem for Blunt also. There's Phil Page, number 94 on the blancmange-coloured Kawasaki, just going through on Marcel Brinkman, and there is Nick Williamson, the race leader. Where's Richard Blunt gone? Blunt has fallen well back, and maybe, just like Adam Palfreman, have we lost Richard Blunt? He's nowhere in sight. Well, there's number 33, that's Don Plain, and Don Plain has gone across the line in 5th, so Richard Blunt has got issues here in this RST clothing Golden Era Superbike race. That would effectively, if Blunt is out of this race, and we wait to see if he's out on circuit, he's certainly not anywhere. Well, he's not in the same picture as Nick Williamson, the race leader here, who could just cruise round to victory. That would promote Jason Dixon up to second on the Suzuki. Jason currently 5th in the championship, and Lee Reevely, well, believe it or not, Lee would pick up 16 points on borrowed machinery. So he would remain championship leader. In fact, he's probably going to remain championship leader from now until the end of the season, and unless he is unable to attend Rockingham due to not getting a bike out there. Nick Williamson back onto the centre straight there, and he has a 10-second lead over Jason Dixon as the last lap flag comes out. Down a couple of gears, the sun is now shining, still very wet out on circuit though. And if he's got a pit board, it'll be saying cruise home as Nick goes into Montreal. Still no sign of second place. There's Craig Jeff, he's up to 4th now, which is impressive given the fact that he couldn't get the bike started and off the line at the start of this race. There's 33, Don Plain. Southern Cross Motorcycles Aprilia. Don is on for 5th place, up ahead of Lee Powell, Marcel Brinkman and Phil Page. But here is your race leader, Nick Williamson. 2nd place at the moment is Jason Dixon on that familiar Clarion Crescent Suzuki coloured 750. He's going to take 2nd place if he can fend off the advances of Lee Reevely, who's closed in on that last lap. But as it is, for the final time, onto the home straight comes Nick Williamson. The rider from Southampton will pick up 25 points here and wins at Snetterton in the Golden Era Superbike, sponsored by RST Clothing. In the background, we might just see the fight for 2nd place. And they're going to be coming across the line any second now. It's going to be Jason Dixon that just gets it by 0.2 of a second, or just under 0.2 of a second, for 2nd place, ahead of Lee Reevely in 3rd. Craig Jeff, number 16, finished in 4th. Don Plain, 5th. And Lee Powell makes up the top 6. There's Nick, the race winner, in the middle, with Dixon to the left and Lee Reevely on the right.
RST Motorcycle Clothing, Golden Era Superbikes winner, Nick Williamson. Very well done.
Thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Challenging conditions, but yeah, didn't miss a beat, didn't fall off and won it. It was brilliant. Really enjoyed it.
Do you normally like the wet?
Yeah, I've always liked the wet. You know, I've always gone well in the wet. It suits my style because I think I can be quite smooth. But last time I tried to win one in the wet, I fell off. So,
well, unusually for a rider, of course, you had 2 bikes on the podium essentially, because you very kindly donated one of your bikes to Lee Reevely, who came 3rd.
Yeah, well, Lee's been really helpful. It seemed like the decent thing to do. I was kind of hoping I wouldn't need it. I was hoping and praying he wasn't going to beat me with my spare bike. Luckily he didn't, but yeah, I'm glad he got a finish out of it. And
that's true gentleman racing. Anyway, anybody you'd like to thank?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Adrian at RBM for supplying the Honda, Glenn the mechanic, basically Crescent Suzuki for all their help, and most of all my wife and kids for supporting me through this lovely hobby.
Fantastic, well done, Nick. Thank you.
Moped, sports bikes, you save watts. Any bike, it makes no odds. We will give you what you need. Best price always guaranteed. Come to us and get a quote. You'll be singing note for note. Walk away with cash to spend on anything you want, my friend. Bike Insurer, Bike Insurer, Bike Insurer.
Get the cheapest bike insurance, guaranteed, only from the Bike Insurer.
Welcome back to Thundersport GB on Motors TV. Golden Era's Superbikes are up next, and on pole position there, the championship leader, number 77, Lee Reevely, a multi-champion at Thundersport GB. There's number 6, Nick Williamson, from Southampton on the RBM Industrial Honda 1000. Richard Blunt, number 13 from Bury St Edmunds, not far away. Dave Blunt Racing, Suzuki 750. And then number 64 on the front row, Adam Palfreman from Letchworth, the Rothwell Racing Honda. Further back there, you can see number 46, Paul Ashton on the Honda Britain 750. Beautiful bike there, ex-Mike Rutter. Grid Girls exit the scene. This class, of course, for 750cc four-cylinder bikes from the 80s and 90s, up against 1000cc twins in the original scintillating superbike format. The green flag in the back means we're ready to go racing, and it looked like a flying start from number 13, Richard Blunt on the S-Rad Suzuki. Yes, he gets the whole shot into turn one ahead of Williamson. In fact, championship leader there. Lee Reevely not getting off to a great start on the Aprilia at all. He is the leader of this championship by over 200 points coming into Snetterton from Richard Blunt. Oh, and we got a faller already further back, and that's 22 Lee Powell. Lee, a good friend of Lee Reevely's, in fact, another rider on the Aprilia, and he's just holding his collarbone there. Hopefully not. Oh, could that be a collarbone? It looks like he knows that he's done something wrong there, but it is still Blunt that leads. As we pan further back and see 161 Mark Evans, former Thundersport 500 champion with Thundersport GB, out on the ZX7R. Into Murray's, the left-hander, and back onto the start-finish straight they go. And that is the Suzuki 750, number 13 of Blunt, heading Nick Williamson. There is the E2E Solutions sponsored Lee Reevely, Coventry rider that has won numerous Sound of Thunder and Super Twin championships at Thundersport GB, but it's the S-Rad Suzuki of Blunt that leads. Further back, Craig Jeff is out there on the Aprilia 1000. Palfreman is trying to get his way back in the top 5. We've got Jason Dixon, number 62, also on the S-Rad Suzuki. There is number 16. No, that's Craig Jeff. I just mentioned on the all-white number 16, another former Thundersport 500 rider. Already got his first podium yesterday. And Lee Reevely there on the Aprilia, a rider that up until the end of last year was only ever on Ducatis, so he's had to change his riding style somewhat this year to really get that Aprilia singing, and it's worked at nearly every race meeting. In fact, I don't think there has been one where Lee hasn't taken at least 2 wins. It's Blunt from Williamson, Craig Jeff, and then Lee Reevely in 4th place at the moment here. We lost Lee Powell on the opening lap on the Aprilia, so he won't be scoring any points. These front 4 now just starting to pull away from the likes of Palfreman, Dixon, Don Plain, Evans, Spreadborough, Brinkman and Paul Ashton. Into Brundle and Nelson they go, exiting there. Oh, and Williamson almost clipped the curb on the outside through the bomb hole, and then into Coram Curve. It just seems to go on forever, but it's a brilliant corner, knee on the deck all the way around until you get to Murray's, the left-hander. Then back on the start-finish straight. So far, nobody really challenging Richard Blunt at the front of this one. And Blunt's lap times, well, it's being matched by Lee Reevely, number 77. There's no surprise there on the Aprilia, who's in 4th place, but it's Blunt that leads. They're doing 1 minute 17. That would be actually good enough to put them in the points in the GP1 race that we've just seen on these older machines. So good going as Craig Jeff moves into 2nd place overall ahead of Nick Williamson, and that's just given a bit of breathing space now to the S-Rad 750 of Richard Blunt there, number 13, with Jeff in 2nd, but Jeff's coming under attack now from Williamson again, the front end wobbling as they break into Brundle and then Nelson. You can scrub off a lot of speeds into Brundle, into the bomb hole. Lee Reevely looks dangerous, doesn't he, in 4th place, but he will be able to see that Richard Blunt is getting away out front, and he won't like that. Once you just get the feeling that once he can get past, or if he can get past Williamson and Craig Jeff, that he has a good chance of being able to close that gap down. But we are at the halfway point of this race, so needs to get a move on. Another lap goes by, and Reevely has got the drive out of that final turn and has got out ahead now of Jeff and Williamson, who it looks like will be battling for third place as Lee Reevely looks to try and close down the leader. And already a couple of tenths he's got it over Williamson, who's just moved ahead of Jeff. So Jeff has gone from second to fourth in under a lap. Further back, that's Mark Evans in 8th place. And number 58, Brian Spreadborough. We've already lost Paul Ashton, he's fallen out of this race, number 46, and Lee Powell. So there's going to be some decent points on offer for any rider that finishes this race. That's the scrap for third. The red bike there, number 6, the Honda of Nick Williamson, fighting off the advances of Craig Jeff from the Aprilia Melee. But what about that gap at the front? There's a few dark clouds hovering above us here. The sun is still out, but hopefully we won't get any interference. It is still Blunt that leads, and the gap at the front has come down significantly. We're now down to just over a second lead for Richard Blunt, who is lapping around about half a second slower than Lee Reevely overall. As the fight for third continues. There's number 62 and 33, fighting for 6, Jason Dixon and Don Plain, number 33. A lot of riders opting for the Aprilia Melee that seems to be running so well, and look how well. Number 77, the Melee of Lee Reevely. Look at the speed he's carrying around Coram. Surely not round the outside, he's going for it, you know. It's going to give him the inside line into Murray's. That is a brilliant move from Lee Reevely to overtake Richard Blunt, but Blunt is now side by side. It's going to be a power battle on the start-finish straight, and the acceleration out of that final turn for Richard Blunt there looked pretty good. Reevely has not had many people that have had his number so far this year, but Blunt, the first time he's seen anybody challenging him, and maybe it's woken him up. You have to say the odds-on favourite here would still be Reevely as he goes up the inside into Montreal, but just watch the different line that Blunt takes. He gets some decent drive. Look at the drive he gets on that Nesrad Suzuki. The grunt of the Aprilia just not working out, and it's going to be Blunt that leads into the final stages of this race here in the Golden Era Superbikes with Thundersport GB. It's going to be a close fight till the end, and closing in now is Lee Reevely onto the back of Richard Blunt. The number 13 rider on the Suzuki, looking for that win here at Snet, and they exit the bomb hole, and this is where Reevely made his move last time, so I'd suggest that Richard will carry a bit more corner speed around Coram Curve, but Lee Reevely's going to have another bite at the cherry into Murray's. Can he make it stick? Not this time. It's all going to be about speed on the start-finish straight. Lee Reevely, the championship leader's not going to win this one. It's going to be Richard Blunt, number 13. He takes the checkered flag. It's a great win for Blunt ahead of Lee Reevely. Thumbs up from Blunt. He will be happy with that, and, well, it's a deserved victory where he's led pretty much from the first corner. Lee Reevely just puts his hand up and signals. It won't really affect too much in the championship, but a good win. Good for the confidence from Blunt ahead of Reevely. Williamson was third ahead of Craig Jeff, and then it was Palferman in fifth ahead of Jason Dixon. And there is Blunt in the middle, Reevely to the left, and Williamson on the right. As you can see in the championship, it doesn't change too much. Still a 207-point lead for Reevely ahead of Blunt, Williamson, Dixon, Wilson, and Josh Daly.
RST Motorcycle Clothing Golden Era Superbikes winner Richard Blunt. Very nice to see you up here, Richard. What a fantastic win and a great battle. Really, really had us on the edges of our seats.
Yeah, it was awesome. I got an excellent start. Got me starts down to a T. It's just the rest of the race. Need to get a bit more speed in the corners, but no, it's absolutely fantastic. Really, really enjoyed it.
Well, you pushed Lee right to the edge, and I mean, just all the time there's a battle, and there just seemed to be nothing in it at all. But you know, you got him in the end.
Yeah, I had a bit of a lead at the start, and I knew about it and relaxed a bit too much, and he caught up very quickly. But no, towards the end I could hear him, but I think I had just a bit more power underneath the bike. Both standard bikes, it seems, so really good fun to get them out there and push them to the limit.
Excellent. Who do you want to thank, Rich?
Massive thanks to my old man, I wouldn't be here without him. And a really big thanks to Equine Motorcycles who've been helping us out trying to get the bike set up, and an even bigger thanks to best friend Dan, who's come back from Cambodia on Friday and spent the night trying to get this bike set up for the race. So absolutely fantastic, thank you.
Well done to Richard, a solid win in the Golden Era Superbike. Still 2 races to come though on Thundersport GB. Don't go away.